Choo choo!
What are you doing?
What do you mean?
I said terrain.
Oh, terrain. I thought you said train. Score here again today, back once again with another episode of Warhammer Thoughty. Yeah! And it's episode 25 now, so next week is my half-year show. If you want me to talk about something special in next week's show, just pop it in the comments down below. It could be about whatever you want me to talk about. I may pick one out of the comments, I may just choose one myself, but yeah, if you've got any ideas for what you want me to talk about next week, pop it in the comments below. But this week's episode is all about terrain, sorry. I keep getting mixed up. Yeah, so this week's episode is all about terrain and how it can affect your wargame and your happiness of your wargaming experience. So, without further ado, I better start talking, hadn't I, about terrain. So, with terrain, for me, let's talk about when I when I very first got into the hobby. When I very first got into the hobby, there wasn't that much variety of terrain available. It was basically you had to make your own terrain. At the time, GW used to sell these roll mats, which were like grass. If you've ever played Subutio, or I don't know if there's an American equivalent actually. It's like Subutio was basically a tabletop football game or soccer game where you flick the little men and they knock the ball and then you tried to beat your opponent. It was using your finger to play football basically. Yeah, so it was a green roll mat, and it wasn't amazing quality or anything. But back in those days, in the rule book, they said stuff like put some books on the floor or on the table and then throw this roll mat over them. It wasn't neoprene like you get nowadays. It was all like a throw or like a bit of cloth basically. So you throw this over the books and then it forms like hills and slopes and stuff like that. But of course, you put a stack of books under there and then it just makes a big slant, so your little men can't actually stand on that. And it makes what was a 6 foot by 4 foot bit of cloth into like a completely different shape. So it's not designed really to do that, despite the fact that they told you to do that. I guess what they meant is put like one book under it every now and again, and then it'll give you a nicely shaped terrain landscape. Yeah, so that's what they told you to do back in the day. They also spoke in the rules about things that blocked, or in the rule book rather, about things that blocked line of sight, and you can just use boxes or DVDs, videos it would have been back then, not DVDs, VHS video cassettes, stuff like that. Just stack them on the battlefield, and you can get different tiers onto your battlefield depending on how you stack them, or you can just block line of sight between miniatures, stuff like that. But that doesn't make your battle very thematic. I mean, it does to a certain extent, because it makes it more realistic in that your miniatures can't see all the miniatures on the battlefield. If it was just a flat plane of a landscape, then your miniatures can see everything on the battlefield, and they, if they've got long enough range weapons, they can shoot everything on the battlefield, and that's not what you want for a balanced game, I'd say, for the simple reason that armies like orcs, they have a very low armor save. So orcs in 8th edition have a 6 up armor save, which means anyone shoots them, if they take a wound, then you've got to roll a 6 to make the save, whereas Space Marines have a 3 up armor save. So if anyone shoots them, they've got to roll a 3 or more to make the save. So it's weighted then in favour of the Space Marine player. So how's that changed over the years? First of all, you saw the introduction in the mid to late 90s of GW producing this printed card terrain, which I love. Like, I look back at it with such nostalgia now. Whenever I see on bat reps on YouTube and stuff, whenever I see that someone's got a piece of this card terrain, be it a card bastion, an orc fort, something like that, I get really jealous. I really do. What they used to produce, they used to produce 2 different types. One was now and again in a White Dwarf magazine, they'd have this really thin card terrain, which was all card, and you take it out, you score it on certain areas, you fold it, you glue it together. And I had one years ago, but I've gotten rid of it. It was when Gorka Morka was around, and it was an orc tower kind of thing, a watchtower. And they'd also have articles in White Dwarf as well that show you, little tweaks on how to make your own terrain. But I'll talk about that in a second. So the other type of the card terrain was this card terrain that was thicker, it was higher quality, it was glossy, and it had come with these plastic bulkheads, and you slot these various bits of card into a plastic bulkhead, and then quite often it'd like have 90-degree angles in it, so when you slot it into the bulkhead, it holds firm. And then put another bulkhead on the other end, and then you've got a walkway there, like a gantry, similar to what you see nowadays in Shadow War Armageddon terrain that's been released, or the Munitorum, Sector Imperialis Munitorum terrain, whatever it is. And then that'd lead to, you could connect that up to a bastion or a bunker or whatever, and that sort of terrain was used for games like Necromunda. But there was also these standalone bastions that were used, could be used in 40k. I mean, you can use them in whatever game you want. It makes your battlefield look better than if there's just a Predator DVD there, or a Commando DVD, whatever. Don't know why I chose 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies there, but back in the day, he was the big boy wanting in acting, so there we go. So moving on from that, like I mentioned, they show you in White Dwarf how you can make your own terrain. I remember it was probably that same White Dwarf I got the Orc Tower in. There was an article on making barbed wire. So you get this thin metal wire, you attach it to like a pencil or something a bit thicker, like let's say a tube like this. You attach it to a tube like that, and handily this has got a little nick in it where you could put one end in, wrap it round like that, wrap it round, and then just slide it off, and then it's wrapped up like barbed wire then. Fabulous little technique. They used to have all sorts of articles in White Dwarf on how to make various bits of terrain. Some required more skill and more equipment, and others were really simple, like that barbed wire one. And it just makes your battlefield look a bit more thematic, gets you in the zone. It gets me in the zone, gets me in the mindset. And then I left the hobby behind after the late 90s. Left it behind, and then I come back in the noughties, and they've got these plastic buildings that you can. The noughties, or the late noughties it probably was, they've got these plastic buildings that you can buy from GW, glue them together, and they look amazing. They're fabulous, they're fantastic. I've not got one to hand at the minute. I should have thought ahead, but I do have these Munitorum armoured containers that I've just finished. I've weathered them up nicely. See if we can get this to focus. We can't. So I've weathered them up nicely, I've dirtied them up, and I've not even glued the doors on, but they fit in there. Oh, I can't get this one out. There we go. So I've not glued the doors on, they fit in there, so you can get them open. You can get you guys hiding in there or whatever. You could even connect them together as like sort of a bridge over something if you wanted to. Anyway, these are the type of terrain they have nowadays. It's like plastic terrain. You paint it, you weather it, whatever. But the thing about terrain is that the reason terrain's good for your battlefield is that it gives you different levels. It gives you guys, your little men that you're moving around the table, gives them different line of sight. So I've got this terrain here. Wolf Brother Mythos is stood on one side of this terrain, and then Freak here, he's stood on the other side of the terrain. So let's see if I can do this. So Mythos can't see Freak, so he can't shoot him. Amazing. Then if he moves around here, he can shoot him. There we go, nice and simple. It just changes the dynamic of the game. But also, once it's all painted and everything, it puts me in the right mindset for the game. Playing with terrain that looks like your miniatures, for me, it puts me in the zone. It puts me in that 40k universe. It really draws me into the game, draws me into the battle a lot more than playing with a box or a Starbucks cup or something like that. Oh, I can't see around this. It's not a water tower, is it? It's just a giant Starbucks cup. It really puts me in the zone for playing 40k. So if you're not used to playing with terrain, or if you think terrain's not that important, think again. Of course, when you've not got many funds to hand or anything like that, or if you've not brought any terrain with you to your mate's house and your mate doesn't have any terrain, try it with DVD boxes, try it with books, try it with, just to see how it changes the game, changes the way you move your miniatures around the battlefield. Rather than rushing towards each other, shooting each other and then charging into combat, it makes it a bit more dynamic. You have to move around the terrain, have to go over the terrain. When you go up in 40k, that takes some of your movement away, so it changes the game slightly. It makes it a different game, so it's definitely worth trying. And then when you do, when you've tried that, if before that you hadn't used terrain, maybe think about investing in some terrain. There's all sorts you can get now on eBay. There's laser cut MDF that you can get glued together. Even if you just get that laser cut MDF and glue it together, it doesn't require much of a paint job, but if you're too lazy to paint it, at least it gives you some different levels. You can get all sorts of ruined buildings where you can move up the building each turn. You can get your snipers on the top level or something like that, and it puts you sort of in that zone. Oh, my sniper's up there because it gives him the best view of the battlefield. It puts you in that zone a little bit more than had you just been playing on a wide open plane, 6 foot by 4 foot with your little men running around. So that's my thoughts on terrain for this week, not trains. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you play with terrain? Is there a reason you don't play with terrain? But let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you've got any suggestions for my half-year video next week, pop them in the comments as well. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I will see you on the battlefield.